All right, so time for another Bill's Nickel. This time I'm going to do it on some first aid kits and blowout kits, what I do, what I take to the range. Again, keeping in mind these videos are for new and inexperienced shooters. You've just bought your first gun. You hear people talk about blowout kits and first aid kits and all of that stuff, and you don't quite have a handle on it. If you're an old hat, you're an instructor, former military, whatever, and you've already got your kits in place, there may be some differences, probably not a lot, might be worth your time, maybe not. But anyway, that's what I want to focus on, blowout kits and first aid kits for new and inexperienced shooters. So why do you need them? What's the purpose of a quote-unquote blowout kit or a first aid kit? Well, the bottom line under all of it, shit happens. There are untold videos out there where guys at the range, in a moment of distraction, ended up putting an extra hole in their leg, hole in their butt, hole in their crotch, and the day doesn't end well. So it's worthwhile for that. The other is just everyday first aid. It takes a lot to do a range trip anymore. When I go to my range is about, I don't know, 20 minutes from here, 15, 20 minutes from here. So by the time I gather my gear, I go out there, I make entry onto the range, I get all my gear set up. I do my drills, whatever that is. Typically, if it's a pistol, I go out for 100 rounds. If it's a rifle, depending on the rifle, somewhere between 50 to 60 rounds. So it takes time, and time is valuable to me and everyone else. So if you do something silly on the range, number one, it can be life-threatening. Number two, if you just have a regular boo-boo kit or a first aid kit with you, that can help. So I'm going to start there. I'm going to start with a first aid kit that I've carried for years. Any paddle trip that I've been on, any overnight camping trip, any week to 10-day backpack trip. Our family takes an annual trip to an island in the middle of Lake Michigan. This thing has gone with me for, I don't know, it's going on 20 years, I think. So I want to talk about a boo-boo kit. This is for the time where you go to the range and you get a cut. You know, you try to open a box of ammo with your knife and you sliced your finger. You got a slide bite in your hand, that kind of thing. And I keep this clipped on the back headrest in my Jeep on the driver's side, and so if I need it, I have it. So I want to talk about that for a minute, and then we'll move on to some of the other stuff. All right. This bag was made by a company called Outdoor Research. I don't even know if they're in business anymore. But in general, let's just kind of go through it. I've got Band-Aids, okay? I spent a lot of time with scouts, and on any camp out, on any given weekend, I would deplete a fair amount of my Band-Aids just because you turn young kids loose with knives, hatchets, saws, walking around on rocks, you're going to get scratches. I call this a boo-boo kit because that's what it is. This isn't nothing in here for life-saving, nothing in here for really big wounds, nothing in here for a holy crap moment with a broken leg, that kind of thing. It's just to get you by until you get home and to stop the leaking in your hand or on your arm or whatever. So an array of different types of Band-Aids is handy. Alcohol swabs are handy just because you may need to clean a wound area. It may be dirty. Now soap and water works good too. I don't have a problem with that. But sometimes you need to get a little cleaner, do a little disinfecting. I like alcohol swabs. If you do backpacking and if you do walking around in the woods or walking around on trails, some sort of blister kit. If you're 2 or 3 days into a hike, you're 20, 30 miles away from where you're going to pull out, and you have a really big blister on a heel, on a toe, that can be a long couple days. So some sort of blister kit is handy. Let's see. Of course, chapstick and Neosporin are kind of have-tos. time in the woods, time on the trail, time in a canoe. All things get stressed. Okay, particularly if you're not a particular active outdoor person. You know, you go out once in a while. You go out once a month. Maybe you go out once a year. Your body's not used to it. Calluses aren't built up, that kind of thing. So all sorts of stuff can happen. Then I've got a little zippered area here that has just an assortment of things. I've got some hydrocortisone for the the inevitable trip to poison ivy, that kind of thing. Just some regular first aid tape, some gauze wrapping, different kinds of meds. These are primarily for me, Rolaids, Sudafed, Bayer aspirin, that kind of stuff. Those can get iffy if you start giving them to people and you're not a medical person. That said, I usually carry some Benadryl in here as well. You're out in the boonies, you're a ways away from an extraction point, somebody gets stung by a bee or whatever, and they're having a reaction to that, it can buy you some time. All right, so these are for little things. I call them boo-boo kits because that's what it is. It's not life-threatening. It's not an injury that is going to drip all over your clothes, drip all over the car, drip all over the range on the way to the car. It's just a scratch, slide bite, that kind of thing. Boo-boo kits are handy. To go along with this stuff, all of these things, is some sort of training. I don't know what, when I say the word training, I don't know what that means to you. For me, it typically means some sort of formal course that's designed to explain an array of tasks. Okay, so if we look at the lowest level that I'd ever recommend, the Red Cross Basic First Aid. Okay, and that's what they're going to teach you. Basic first aid as well as CPR, how to use an AED, those kinds of things. That class has really gotten, it's diminished, I guess that's the word I'll use. I took my first one probably 15 years ago, 20 years ago, maybe even more than that. It was a long day. You actually rolled people around the ground. You found rescue positions. They explained why rescue positions were important. They teach you CPR hands-on. It felt like there was more depth to it. I'm not saying you shouldn't go to a Red Cross course now. There's certainly value there, but I believe that it's diminished in from what it used to be. The next one I took from the Red Cross is their Wilderness First Aid. I'd certainly recommend that. At the time I last took it, it was a 3-day course. You do everything from learning how to put splints on and evaluating different kinds of breaks and wounds and that kind of stuff, to planning and actually doing an extraction of a person. Again, that's going to depend on the instructor. It's going to depend on the area you plan on going, that kind of thing. But as a step up from that, Wilderness First Aid is certainly an excellent course in my opinion. Past that, when you start talking about shooters, there's a lot of stuff that's come out of the woodwork based on experiences in the sandboxes, Iraq and Afghanistan. Essentially, combat trauma medicine of some sort. So it deals more with life-threatening catastrophic wounds. What you'll find, and we'll talk about that when we talk about the blowout kit here, the amount of equipment is diminished because the wounds are typically large enough that you're never going to be able to fix them. That's not your job. Your job is to keep the red inside the body long enough to get help. Now, the advantage we have in most of the places you would be on a range in the United States, help is fairly close. We've actually had folks have heart attacks on our range. Typical response time for a full-up ambulance crew is about 5 minutes. That's exceptional, to be real honest. if you're hunting, if you're deep in an encampment, you know, by horse or by hiking for a fair distance, this may be indeed what you need to keep the red in longer. So we'll talk about what's in it. I define these as blowout kits, okay? You've blown out a chunk of your leg, you've blown out a chunk of your arm, you have an artery exposed, and arteries can pump a lot of blood really fast. Femoral arteries come along the inside of your crotch. The brachial is on the inside of your arm. They're on the inside because your flesh and your bone protect them. But if you take a round in the crotch, if you take a round in the arm, and it blows away chunks of meat, you can expose the artery, and while direct pressure, whether it would be a hand or a knee, can staunch the flow, it's not going to stop it long enough for you to communicate and find help and all of that stuff unless you can actually stop the bleeding. So that's what we're going to talk about. This is my updated blowout kit. I'm going to set that aside and I'll go with the one I've carried this one for a long time. It's going to find a home, I think, on a battle belt that I'm putting together just because I want to work on some more types or different types of range drills that involve both carbine and pistol. Battle belts for me seem to be the way to go, so that's what we're going to work on. This is already configured for MOLLE installation, whether it be on a vest or a cummerbund or a battle belt, so it seemed natural to transition over. A couple basic things that all of these kits are going to have. Perhaps the most important is a tourniquet. Okay, this is the soft T wide tourniquet. I like it for a number of reasons. If you look like the cat, for example, which is probably the most popular, you actually have to pull the strap out. You have to move it around the limb that you want to install it on. You have to put it through the buckle. You have to cinch it down. You're fighting Velcro along with it. It just feels cumbersome. It feels doubly cumbersome if you're dealing with yourself. This I always have physically on my person when I'm at the range, because I may not be able to make it to the 50 yards to the back of the range where where I'd lay it on a bench. So I actually take it with me. The thing I like about this is that it has a buckle that you can simply adjust to the worst case limb, say your leg, and then have it there. So if I need to deploy it, I open it, wrap it around the leg, pull it, and now it's buckled, and now I can tighten it. The biggest mistake that I think people make with these is that they fail to tighten the strap enough. The way I tell the folks that I talk to about this is you tighten it as hard as you can once, then you yank it again twice, then you yank it a third time, okay? The idea behind that is that you want the tourniquet's strap to be as tight as it can, so the windlass that you use here to tighten it down even more doesn't have to do as much work. I saw a photograph the other day, next generation cat, and I'll show you that in this one, from Soft T, where they tightened it so much that they just lucked out that it worked. Okay, the new windlass has some catches up on top, so they could put that in there and it held. But the reason it was that way is they didn't tighten this enough. Make sure you really reef on this. When you have it as tight as you want, there's a little ring that comes up, holds it in place, and there you go. Now, when I was first taught about tourniquets way too long ago, the idea behind it was that you put them on, and in those days, the military side of the house was a med pack, and if you needed a seal, you took the plastic that the med pack was in, you put that over the hole, you put the med pack over it, and then you had a field expedient windlass, whatever that was, a stick, who knows, whatever you could find, that would work as a windlass, that's what you used. These are better, okay? The other reason I like the soft T is that this is a metal windlass, not plastic, okay? It's aluminum, and it's plenty beefy, where the others have a tendency to be some sort of polymer, and you can get to the point where it'll snap and break, and then you've screwed the pooch, and you gotta try alternate methods. All right, so a tourniquet is a must. Long ago and far away, when they talked about how you babysat these things, they'd say basically anywhere from an hour, a half hour to an hour, you'd loosen up a little bit, let the blood flow, and then you tighten it back down. The idea was that you'd have some blood flow into the limb that would help keep tissue, muscle, and nerves alive. They've passed on that now. I mean, there have been fellows that they'll have multiple tourniquets. They may have one on each leg. They may have one on each arm. There have been cases where these have been on for hours from the time the extraction started until they got to a med center and the limbs recovered, okay? So those things are kind of out the window. The main issue is stop the blood, stop the blood, stop the blood, stop the blood, all right? Some other odds and ends with this, you have a pair of scissors. You need to find out where the hole is, all right? So if it's on an arm, if it's on a leg, and you see an entry point through the pants, and you see red all over the place, but you don't know where the hole is, you need to find it. You can use a pair of scissors. I also have a cutting tool from Benchmade where you can make a small hole and then just rip the pants open and find the hole. The tourniquet needs to be installed about 3 inches above the hole, all right? 3 inches above the hole. Other odds and ends that are in here, I'm not going to pull them out of here because they're tucked away in a nice little package, and I'm not going to mess that up. But I will open up my new bag. And a couple odds and ends in here. I have scissors in here as well, okay? I have the new, I think this is a 4th generation cat T, or soft T rather, soft T wide. The difference is that there are now ridges on the windlass, and then there's also a notch that you can put the end of the windlass in once it's tight, put it in the notch, then you flip the tab up to lock it in place. So it's considerably more secure. This is the bandage that a lot of people use. It's the Israeli bandage. Again, in my day, it was the plastic pack with a compress and long tails on both sides, so you could wrap it around a limb and leave you enough material over that you could cinch it down to make it into a tourniquet. This is specifically a pressure compression bandage. So you put the tourniquet above the wound and you put this over the wound. It also has a catch on it so that when you wrap it and you tighten it down, it'll lock itself in place. So pretty darn handy. A space blanket. One of the biggest dangers when you have a wound like that is just shock. People go into shock. And so a space blanket, you can provide some heat retention, especially if it's going to be a while. Like I said, if these are big things. If you popped open your blowout kit to handle the issue, it's a real issue. It's going to put a stress on a person's body, and going into shock is pretty darn easy to do. A couple chem lights. These are new. I've not had these. Well, in fact, the Mylar blanket is new. Chem lights are new. In this kit, I saw them in a couple other examples. The nice thing about this is nasty stuff always happens at night. You should always have a flashlight on you if you're outside at night, but you may not. This way you can be assured in your blowout kit you've got some way to create illumination. Also in the dark, you don't lose the person, okay? If you have to go somewhere to get help, that kind of stuff, it helps them to be found when they get back. A Sharpie pen, you can't ever have too many of these things, but the idea here is to write on a tourniquet the time that you initiated the tourniquet. If you've done anything else, you could make notes on their arm. You could put the time across their forehead if you needed to, but you need some way to leave data for the med crew that comes. Chest seals are kind of a specialty item. The idea behind that is if you get shot in a lung, there's an entry wound on the front and there's an exit wound on the back. So each of these come as a 2-pack. You put, there's a spot in the center of the chest seal that you center over the hole, and it's built in such a way that they call it burping it. Okay, your lungs depend on being airtight, okay, so that they can inflate. If air gets in them, then it inhibits the function of the lung, and of course the way the air gets in it if somebody's blown a hole through it. So this allows you to burp the lung, let the extra air come out, and then it'll reseal. And again, it's mitigation for injuries that you aren't going to be able to fix. Okay, you're just trying to keep the red in, keep the person functional until help really arrives. Also have some clotting gauze. Okay, so you have let's say you have a deep knife wound and you need to find some way to get the bleeding to stop. Knife wounds are very precise, so that there's not a lot of ways to hold that thing together. So this, you can either stuff it in or you can lay it over it. It has material in it that clots, so that the wound closes and stops bleeding quicker. Just a word of caution. I think most of the stuff I would guess is used up by now, but the very early quick clot material, and I'm going to say from 12 years ago, when you put it on a wound, it generated so much heat that it could actually damage tissue. If you have any really old stuff, it's time to upgrade, okay? You should upgrade on this stuff every once in a while as well, but definitely that material, I'd encourage you to upgrade on that. And that's it, okay? So you can see from this that it is just, it's maintenance. You're trying to stop the bleed, you're trying to keep the red in, you're trying to keep air in the lungs while you're waiting for help to arrive, all right? If you're on a range, a couple things you need to kind of keep in the back of your mind. Most ranges are going to have their address stuck up somewhere. If you don't know that, or if you don't know it off the top of your head, take a picture of it so it's in your phone, so that if you get injured out there and you call 911, they should know where you are, but if you're calling on a cell phone, they may well not know where you are. So you need to be able to give them good directions to get to either the injured person, or if you're that injured person, you need to be able to have them give good directions to you. The other thing is take coursework for this stuff as well. Like I said earlier, there's a number of companies out there that conduct good stop the bleed courses, trauma care courses. They call it a bunch of different things, but until you actually look at this stuff, until you see either real life experiences where you're putting the tourniquet on and you're putting sample Israeli bandages on so you can see how they work, YouTube is not a substitute for taking good coursework. It is, in all things, it costs money. Life's a bitch. You know, take good firearms training, that costs money. Take good training to learn how to use a blowout kit or a first aid kit, it costs money. I don't have an answer for that. My concern would be that you have an accident, or someone in your class, if you're teaching a class, especially for those instructors that deal with new and inexperienced shooters, make sure you have enough RSOs to keep an eye on everybody. But if something happens where a hole appears, you need to have material with you. You need to know how to use the material so you can do your best to keep that person breathing until help arrives. All right? So that's my nickel for today. Get a good first aid kit, a boo-boo kit. You'll use that more than anything else on the range. Get a good blowout kit. I'll put links to what I bought for this stuff in the post that this video is in, so that you can, it's all orders from Amazon, nothing tricky, no secrets here. So you can at least simulate it. There's also a crap ton of really good IFAKs individual first aid kits online in Amazon. Read the reviews, find a good one. Good ones are going to be $100, $120 bucks. Okay. If I have to add up all of this, I probably come in a little under that because I had some stuff already. And then the thing you got to remember is this needs to be on your butt when you go to the range. Okay. If you're out there by yourself, I was out to the range earlier this week, doing a box of 50, and this was on my butt because I was the only one out there. Okay, if you're going out there and you're the only one on the range, you really need to prepare yourself so that if things go to pieces, you've got a way to paste yourself back together till help comes. Anyway, that's it. That's Bill's nickel. I'm gonna find my handy dandy little off switch here. And thanks for listening. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. I'll post this on Facebook as well. You can leave it in the comments on the Facebook as well. You have a good day.